Welcome to the show. Today we have Karen Whitmire with us, and I am really looking forward to talking to you, Karen. I have enjoyed two of your books already, and I am looking forward to devouring more of them. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Now, I am looking for one of the things that I am looking forward to is actually getting to know you and letting the listeners get to know you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and something fun that isn't normally in your bio.
Okay, well, my name is Karen Whittemire, and I live in Abilene, Texas. I came to Texas from California, so I'm a transplant. Came out
Okay.
here to came out here to go to school, and met my Texas husband, and so he roped me in good. So I've been in Texas ever since, and have just learned to love it here. People are wonderful. I've raised three Texas natives now. So
Okay. Yes.
so love it here, and all of my books are set in Texas. That's kind of become part of my
Hmm.
brand, so that's kind of fun. Um, let's see. I have written about 25, 26, I think, books now, and have just really enjoyed the journey. It's a lot of work, but also so rewarding, and such
Hmm.
a way to kind of partner with the Lord as you're walking through, because heaven knows I don't have the talent to do it on my own. So so thankful for that help along the way. So something random that is not in my bio anywhere. My favorite animal is the hippopotamus. And
Okay.
the kind of crazy story behind this is I had a friend back in elementary school. And in school they always have favorite animals that you're talking about and things.
Hmm.
And we were determined that we would not have a normal animal as our favorite animal.
Okay.
We
No,
wanted to be
yeah. No cats, no dogs, no horses.
Exactly. We wanted to be unique. She picked the armadillo. I picked the hippopotamus. And ever since then, it's been a thing. I have little hippos around the house. My husband has bought me I Love Hippo socks, and just, it's a thing now. So,
Oh my gosh, that is funny. Well, the first thing that came to my mind was the song at Christmas. I
yeah,
want a hippopotamus for Christmas.
I sing that one every year. Yes.
Okay.
I don't really want a hippopotamus for Christmas, though, but
Well, no, because they're actually one of the deadliest animals in
I
Africa. They are
know.
responsible for more deaths than the lions are. Which, when I heard that, I was like, really? But yeah, they are some powerful animals, and if you threaten them, yeah, you better be able to move quick because those big chompers can chomp big
Yes.
time. Well, that is funny. And I think I will probably think of you the next time I see a hippopotamus and go, oh, this is Karen's favorite animal. This is so funny. So don't be surprised if you get an email with a picture of a hippopotamus in it now.
Perfect.
That's great. Well, as I mentioned, I have already read two of your books. One is the latest book, and we're going to get into that. But I want to talk a little bit about how you got into writing and how did you mentioned that you write a lot about Texas, or your books are set in Texas. So give us a little bit of that journey, because I know it probably took some time.
It did, yes. So I was not one of those kids that always wanted to be a writer. I just loved reading. I loved
Mm.
books and stories. I would go to the library and come home with, this 3 foot high pile of books that I wanted to read, and just go hide in my room and read them as fast as I could. I loved story. And as I grew up, I was a good student in school,
Mhm.
and I would have, teachers who would compliment my writing, but I never really thought much of it. Came to college, and was getting ready to graduate with my master's degree. And I had another professor that said, you should really think about writing. You have a talent there. Now, of course, this is academic writing. It's very different
Yes.
from writing fiction. Very,
Yes.
very different. But it was one of those things that, I love story. I never really like journaled or anything, but I love to daydream. So it's kind of like, having,
Mm.
if I didn't like the way a movie ended, I would just rewrite it in my mind. And, that, or I would, how can I, change this to make it unique and make it my own kind of thing. And so one of those dreams that you just think about, maybe someday I will try, but someday never really happened because I was
Yeah.
busy in life and was
Well,
getting married,
yep.
finishing
Someday is not a day on
college.
the calendar.
Exactly. I had babies, and then God decided to wake me up. And so my husband, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time because my youngest was less than a year old.
Mhm.
And my husband found out that his position was being downsized. And
Mm.
so we had this moment of panic of, oh no, what's going to happen if he loses his job? I need to do something to help contribute to the family income. But I still wanted to be at home with my kids. So I was like,
Yeah.
what should I do? I'm like, I know, I'll write a book and I'll make money right away. Very, very
Oh, and
naive.
all of the
Yes,
established authors are going, he.
exactly. Exactly. But it was something that got me off the someday path and onto the, you know what, let's actually start working on this
Hmm.
now. I
Yeah.
joined a local writers group. I found some online groups. I started writing short pieces. I got a few things published in like Clubhouse Junior Magazine from Focus on the Family, and
Hmm.
and just started getting my toes wet. And it it kind of built this desire in me that, maybe this is something that I want to do. And so
Yeah.
I actually founded another job at Abilene Christian University. It's also where my husband works now. And so I entered the workforce. So I'm working 8 to 5, but I still had this desire, you know what? I think I'm really
Yeah.
supposed to be writing. So I still pursued that in addition. And 6 years later, I signed my first 3 book contract with Bethany House. So you never know what's going to kick you into action. God got my attention, and I decided, this was what something He wanted me to do.
Yeah, well, and he has a way of doing that sometimes. And I think, we may not look at it as, oh, yes, of course, this is the perfect time to do this. We sometimes look at it and go, are you serious? Are you kidding me? This is not a good time. And then when you look back and you go, oh, no, actually it was a really good time. It probably was a good time for him to tap me on the shoulder or knock me upside the head, which is what he usually has to do for me. Uh, I tend to have to go the 2x4 route.
I've been there myself.
Yes, but it's always interesting to see that sometimes God's timing really is a little better, even though we may not think it at the time. Now, for those that are writers, I did have a question for you. Are you a planner or a pantser?
I'm a little bit of both, probably
Okay.
probably more on the planning, plotting side, but I don't. So the way my process works is I sit down and write a synopsis for the story that I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
get ready to do. I do some preliminary research. I figure out kind of who my characters are. I take maybe like a week to do that.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's not super in depth. It's usually anywhere from like 4 to 8 pages. Sometimes it might be a little bit longer, but it basically gives me a framework for what the story is going to be like, who the characters are, what the main goal is that they're trying to accomplish, what are some of the big plot points that are going to happen along the way. And so I have kind of just this.
A rough
Yeah,
skeleton on
yeah,
which
a
to
rough
build on.
skeleton. That's
Yeah.
that's a good way to say it. And then I just sit down and start writing. So I don't go by chapter. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, how I'm going to get from point A to point B, but I know where point A and point B are. And I'm usually pretty good at staying to the roadmap. I sometimes will take little side trips along the way, but
Mm-hmm.
usually my finished product ends up being fairly close to what my intent was at the beginning. So I do some planning, but then I also just kind of sit down and go after I have the basic framework.
Yeah, and for those, I had never heard the term until somewhat recently, the whole planner pantser, and that was like pantser, writing by the seat of your pants. And I'm like, oh, okay, I like that term. Because yes, and it's interesting to see some writers are very much they have a lot planned out, and some just have the roughest of ideas, and then they just kind of to go with it. But it's whatever works for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's got to work for them. And now, how has you mentioned that God is the one that really kind of instilled this desire and nudged you and really kind of opened your eyes to go, maybe this is something that I'm really called to do and that I have a gift to do. How has your faith, because the faith does shine through in your books, how has your faith affected your writing? But then on the flip side, how has writing and getting into these stories and that affected your faith?
Very good question. It is such an integral part of the writing process for me. I pray over my writing every day. I really feel it's not like I can point to specific things all the time, but it can be something as simple as all of a sudden the right word just pops into my head. And I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Or I get an inspiration for an idea of, this would be really cool if we did this. And I really don't think it's myself coming up with those. I think the creator is helping and inspiring and guiding. And so I really feel that influence. But I will say that the biggest place where I feel his influence is as I am writing the spiritual thread for the story. It's very rare that I start off with an idea of this is the message I'm going to convey in the book.
Okay.
Usually it's more of these are the characters and this is what they're dealing with. And as we go through, how is God impacting their lives? And because you write from what you write, from an
Mm-hmm.
authentic place of who you are, a lot of the spiritual issues that my characters deal with are spiritual issues that I deal with as well. Interesting how
Okay.
God does that.
Yes, isn't it though?
There's a lot of themes of trust, a lot of themes of, working things out with family. There's a lot of themes of his timing versus my timing, those kind of things. And so a lot of that, I think God is trying to teach me something in the process of writing,
Mm-hmm.
so that then I can share that with others. And one of the things that it just never ceases to amaze me is when a writer will reach out and they'll send me an email and they'll say, God really spoke to me in this. And I'm like, that is not even what I intended when I wrote that. But how amazing
Oh,
is it that God is using that to speak some truth to your soul that I didn't even know was there? And so it's not just a what did I intend, but it's also what did God intend for the readers to get out of it? And I think he can send different things to different readers depending on where they are in their own personal journey.
yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that because it's going to go through, they're going to read it through their filter and what they are dealing with. And even if you may have had one thing in mind, God's going, nah, yeah, that's for you, that's for you. But then this is going to be for this reader over there, and this is going to be for that reader. And so, yeah, I do. I think God can use all of it to speak to us individually. But what is there something when you finally get to the end? Is there something that you really want your readers just overall, I guess, because then we can get more into specifics because I think each book probably has its own message. What are you really hoping the readers get out of some of your stories?
From a spiritual standpoint, my hope is that um they see something about God that draws them nearer to Him in the
Mm-hmm.
story, whatever shape that takes, whether it's overt or just more subtle. But as a reader, I also want to create an entertaining experience for them. I
Mm-hmm.
want them to be swept up in adventure. I tend to write lighthearted stories that have humor and things mixed in. So I want to bring joy to the reader as well. And to just, life can be yucky sometimes, and sometimes we need to escape into something that's, not our problems. It's somebody else's problems, and we can laugh when they laugh, and we can, get swept up in an adventure that takes us away from our own life for a little bit. And I think there's some health that can be gained there. But really, my main theme, besides just an entertaining experience, is to also to meet God in the pages somehow.
Yeah, well, and I am reminded so many times that there are lessons that we can learn sometimes better through stories. And Jesus taught through parables all the time. And we can, maybe you really do need to read a book about forgiveness and family issues, or maybe you do. Maybe you just want to pick up a book that has that theme running through it. And then through the characters and through the story, you don't feel preached at. You can just kind of enter in
Exactly.
and go, oh, and yes, and I totally agree that there are times when if I am stressed and I'm overwhelmed, as much as I love a lot of nonfiction books, and they're very helpful and they're very meaningful, and they can really teach a good principle, there's times when I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. I just want to sit outside in the sun and escape into somebody else's world. And then you go, oh, and then there was that lovely little message that came along with it. But it's refreshing. And I actually heard something the other day that I had never heard, was reading fiction helps your brain combat Alzheimer's because you're trying to track the stories in the character. And I was like, really? I have scientific evidence to support my reading habit? Yay!
Absolutely. Well, and I think one of the biggest things you get from reading fiction is your a chance to grow in empathy with other people. There,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to me how much I will forgive a hero because I know his backstory and I know what he's been through. But the guy
Yeah.
that I meet, at the gas station who's being rude, it's like, you're a jerk. But I don't know what he's been going through, because
Yeah.
I don't see all of his backstory and all of that. But when I learn to look at people through that lens of, you know what, he's probably got a story too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps you build empathy towards people and understand that, you know what, you don't know what's going on, what all the struggles that they have been going through too.
Yeah, I think you make a very valid point there. And I try to remind myself, some days I'm better at it than others, that if there's something going on, it's like, I don't know what their day is like, because I have been guilty of it. I've been guilty of having a bad day. There's stuff going on in my life, and I'm probably pretty grumpy to some people that didn't deserve it, but that's where I was that day. And they may or may not know what else was going on. And maybe I didn't see him because I didn't see him. My mind was elsewhere. I had no intention of cutting them off or whatever else. But yeah, you don't know. And I like the idea of that, building empathy, because the character's backstory and you go, okay, yeah, that was a jerk thing to do, but I get it because you have all of this and that and the other. Now, we've mentioned escaping, and you have this series, Texas Ever After, where you're taking fairy tales and kind of giving them a Texas twist. And your newest book is If the Boot Fits. And so tell us about this one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't want to put it down.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I grew up watching Disney, right? And all
Mm-hmm.
the classic fairy tales and all of that. And I've seen a lot of different fairy tale retellings. I've seen them in contemporary stories. I've seen them
Mm-hmm.
in science fiction stories, fantasy set stories, but I hadn't really seen very many in the Western genre. And so I thought, you know what? It would be really fun to be able to mix, two of these things that I love, the fairy tale story and, the cowboys, the Texas Cowboys, and bring them together. And so that's what I did. And with If the Boot Fits, as you might be able to guess, it's a Cinderella retelling.
Yes.
Um, with a boot that gets left behind of the ball. But I thought it would be fun to give it a little more of a twist too. So it's more of a Cinderfella story. So the poor cowboy is
There you
after the
go.
rich cattleman's, princess daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of fun, kind of doing the role reversal and, kind of redeeming some of the characters. One of the things I don't like about fairy tales is the stepmother is always the bad guy.
Yes, it's always the evil stepmother. And I know the poor stepmoms that are out there that are actually really good, and in some cases could be better
Exactly.
than the biological mother. I've seen that case as well. So yeah.
Exactly. So I really wanted the stepmother in this story to really be a godly woman who was
Mm-hmm.
super supportive and loving and very family oriented. And so I really wanted to redeem that stepmother role. And so that's one of the things that I did. But because she's not the villain and it becomes pretty obvious that she's not the villain, then I
Mm-hmm.
had to come up with a different villain. And so I won't give it away, but it was
Oh
it was
no.
a challenge to figure out who's going to be the bad person
I was
in this
surprised.
story.
I wasn't until the very end. And there was one point in the story I went, hmm, that's a little unusual. I wonder if there's significance behind that. And I won't say what it was because I don't want to give it away. And then later on, I was like, oh, it's got to be this person. It's got to be. And then yeah, it was. But that was very close to the end. So yeah, kept us guessing on that one. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
So, and one of the other things is the like you really enjoyed. I read that you really enjoyed coming up with the names.
I
And
do.
I found that part fascinating. So please tell us what you enjoyed about coming up with some of the names for the characters.
So naming my characters, whether the book is fairy tale or not,
Mhm.
is something I love, right? I only had three kids. I only was able to come up with three names for them. But I have all these, dozens and dozens of characters that I can name. And it's important for me. I think names carry meaning. And so it's important for me, especially for the larger characters in a story, to have names that mean something. And it means something to me. So sometimes they might have a private meaning for me that nobody else even knows. Or if you're really astute, you might pick up on some of the little hints that I
I did
drop.
not catch Asher's name until I read that. I didn't even occur to me. And I went, oh my gosh, that is so clever.
So Asher is a perfect example. So he's a Cinderfella character, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
ashes are a synonym for cinders. Instead of Ella, we have Ellis as his last name. So Asher Ellis kind of plays off of the Cinderella. And I love biblical names. And, Asher was a biblical name from the Old Testament. And so I'm checking lots of boxes with that. That's
Oh,
making
yeah.
me
You
very
got to check
happy.
lots of boxes.
Yeah. And then I played I had a lot of fun with, kind of some of the Disney stuff too. So, Asher has two stepbrothers, and so they're named Jonathan and Fergus, but Jonathan goes by Jack. And at one point in the story, Fergus gets called Gus by a little kid. And so we have Jack and Gus Gus, who are, the
Yep.
mice in
Mm-hmm.
the Cinderella Disney version. And then Bruno was the loyal hound that helped Cinderella out, and that's the name of Asher's horse. And so, I had a lot of fun playing with it. The king had a duke who is his right hand man, and so the Cattle King, Eli Deering, has a guy named Duke who is his right man. And so, I tried to have a lot of fun, playing with that, and it was something that I just really enjoy.
Yeah, well, and part of it, I knew it was a Cinderella telling, but it was very loose. I didn't, because sometimes the retelling, you kind of go, oh, yeah, okay. It's so predictable. It's so much like the others. They just changed a name and address or something like that. And you go, yeah, 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 yeah. But no, you flipped it and then you added little things. And I really enjoyed, I did catch that his younger brother liked writing stories and had a story about mice. And I was like, oh,
Yes.
there's the nod to the little mice in Cinderella. So I caught that one.
Exactly.
But just kind of enough of a nod to be go, oh, that was kind of cool without being overdone. So
Right.
yeah,
That
I
was that was
thoroughly
one of the
enjoyed it.
challenges with
Mm-hmm,
rewriting these fairy tales. Is like you said, I don't want it to be predictable. I won't don't want it to be just the same old story that everyone's heard. I want
mm-hmm,
people to feel a sense of nostalgia when they read it and to feel that kind of automatic connection because it was a story they learned in childhood, but I want it to be completely fresh and different too. And so that is kind of the challenge to pay homage to something but yet be
mm-hmm.
something fresh and different at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going more into the characters, one of the things that I thought about in when you're developing your characters, you want your hero to be admirable. You want to be able to look up to them and they, be a good person, but you want it believable too. So they can't be perfect. They can kind of be really good and dreamy. I think I was like, yeah, there's some dreamy cowboys in there. And but they're still human and they're still believable. So, how do you kind of get that balance with, okay, here's these hero people or heroine people, but keeping them real and relatable? Because I don't always relate to a princess or cattle baron's daughter.
Exactly, exactly. It is tricky, and it's something that I think um you have to be vulnerable with yourself as well as
Mhm.
you're writing it because I have plenty of flaws. I will readily admit that I do. And even though we don't you necessarily want to, advertise them, they're there. And so I think
Mhm.
it's the same when you're writing the characters. You want them to be likable, admirable people, but you also want them to have room to grow. The things that they go through in the course of the story should change them, right? That should change them
Mhm.
hopefully for the better, as they, become more of who they are designed to be, especially as they grow closer to God and closer to another person in this relationship. And so it is. I think that the big thing is to just be genuine with them, and not try so hard to make them perfect, because then they won't be relatable, as you said. And so,
Yeah.
Asher from the very beginning, he's doing something that's wrong, but he's doing it for an
Hmm.
admirable reason. So you
Yeah.
still kind of like him because he's doing it for the right reason, but he's really messing it up. And that's going to come back to haunt him a few times, over the
Hmm.
course of the
Yeah, it
story,
does.
going to be something that he and the heroine are going to have to work through, that he and the heroine's father are going to have to work through, all of that. And Samantha comes with a lot of her baggage too. She's got a lot of pain and misconceptions over
Hmm.
relationships with her family, from her childhood on, and she's kind of resistant to opening the door to deepening a family relationship at the beginning, because she's just too hurt. And
Yeah.
seeing her grow over the course of the story, I think really, I'm hoping it's something to help other people who see themselves in family relationships that may not be ideal, that there's been hurt feelings and other things more deep than that, that you can have honest conversations and work through some of those things so that healing can take place.
Yeah, yeah, and I did. I liked the reconciliation and that thing with the family and such. So you've got this was the second in your Texas Ever After. The first one's kind of loosely based on Snow White, and then you have another one coming out. So what's the next one that's coming out? What are you working on now?
Right. Yeah, the third book in the series will be out in December, and it is called Cloaked in Beauty. And
Hmm.
this one is a little bit different because I take two different fairy tales and combine them together. So I take Little Red Riding Hood and mash it up with Sleeping Beauty. And so
That is
I've
not
had
a combination I would have come up with.
it was so fun, and as the story was kind of developing in my head, it made sense. So one of the things I initially started with the Sleeping Beauty story, but I needed, she's going to be off, as Sleeping Beauty was off on her own, being raised in
Mm.
isolation, by three fairies. Well, we're not going to have three fairies in
Yeah,
Texas,
yeah,
so
no.
so who's going to raise her? Well, how about a grandmother? Somebody who'd be very trusted by her mother to take care of her, off on her own. Well, who else was with a grandmother out, in the woods? Well, we have Little
There we
Red Riding Hood,
go.
and we can, have the very iconic red cloak that, plays a role. And there's a wolf that is not a bad wolf, but is the heroine's best friend growing up, because she's in isolation. She is not around people at all. So she makes friends where she
Mm.
can. She raises this wolf cub, and now he is, her protector and all of that. And so it was one of those things where it really, it's kind of Little Red Riding Hood with the backstory of Sleeping Beauty. Once she turns a certain age, she has to go back home, and a Pinkerton agent is the one who's been hired to bring her. And so those are the two. It's kind of a journey romance, and those are the two that fall in love over the course of the journey. And of course, his name is Philip, and he rides a white horse because.
Okay, well, because Philip rode a white horse. There we go. All right. Well, I will be looking forward to that. And as we kind of start to wrap up, and I'm a little sad because I would love to just sit and chat about all the other books that I'm looking forward to reading, and some that I've already read. But yeah, I know there may be authors out there, or wannabe authors, or just people that know that they want to do something. What would you say to someone if you could sit down and have a cup of coffee to encourage someone to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart?
I would recommend that you give that gift to God in whatever
Mm-hmm.
way He sees to use it. A lot of times we get inspired to do something, and then I've been guilty of this. I take it over and I want to do it the way I want it to be done. I want to do it in my timetable. I want
Mm-hmm.
everything to happen just the way that. I see it happen for other people. So I'm a little jealous because it's not happening the way it happens for other people. So I would encourage patience, trust that God will do with it what He wants to do with it, and also just a lot of be malleable. Be teachable. Let God shape you. Let the story shape you. Let learning from other writers, learning from other books that you've read. Let all of that shape you and form you to become the best that you can be. And don't be in a hurry. Publishing is very slow, and you have to be very patient. And with all of the indie pubbing that is out there now, and I've done a couple indie pubbing projects myself, it's very easy for people to get in a hurry. It's like, well, I can just put it up right now. I'm excited. It's ready. I'm ready for it to be out there. And then it's too soon, and you're not really
Mm.
as ready as you thought you were. And that could end up hurting your chances to be successful later. So take the time, make sure you've done it right, and just let God take it where He wants to go.
Okay. And how can people connect with you, Karen, and get a hold of some of these books to read during the summer or afterwards and that?
The best place to find me is on my website, KarenWittemeyer.com. You'll find all my books there. There's some fun behind the scenes information I share on my website as well. And then if you like to interact more directly, the social media that I'm the most active on is in a Facebook group called The Posse. Since I write cowboys, I have
Okay.
a
There you
fan group
go.
called The Posse, and I'm there Monday through Friday, and we have a really active group that's a lot of fun. In fact, I use my group to help me brainstorm some things. So
Hmm.
when I was trying to come up with a clever name for Asher Ellis, they were the ones I went to help. And they were the ones that
Okay.
helped me come up with some of these ideas. So it's wonderful to get help from readers who are just really dedicated to the craft. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, proof again that we are better together.
Absolutely.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for the stories that you write that help us just escape and learn and grow. And just really appreciate it. And I look forward to reading some more over the summer.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy to be here.